Well, it's been a while since I've done a race review inside my car, but I'm currently at work right now, so it's kind of one of the reasons why I'm doing this. For some reason my camera screen's not. Okay, that's weird. But yep, we had the Cup race at Phoenix, and it was actually a lot better than I expected. Of course, that's due to the new package that they came out with. But there's still some problems with it, and there's a lot of other stuff we need to get to as well. So let's get into it. This is the fuel. What's happening, ladies and germs? This is the PackerMan, and welcome to today's edition of the Fuel. Some crazy shit going on in the world of sports right now, particularly in motorsports. You know, with this whole coronavirus shit that's been going around, basically becoming a worldwide epidemic at this point. So, because of all the news that's going to be coming, it's basically been out this week, including the original shit that I was going to talk about. I'm going to change up the format this week. Typically, what I do is that I do news of the week and then dumbass of the week, if applicable, and then I get right into the review. But because of, you know, all the shit that's been going on with the coronavirus and how that's basically become the big story of the week, basically I'm going to be breaking from format this time because the news stories regarding the coronavirus are just way too big. And honestly, the Phoenix race, as decent as it was, is going to be taking a bit of a back seat this week because of all the news stories that have come out. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into the race review. Alright, so here is the review of the 2020 FanShield 500 at Phoenix. The stages for this race were kind of weird. They staggered it with stage 1 being 75 laps, stage 2 being 115 laps, and stage 3 being 122 laps. Not exactly uniform, but it's whatevs. Anywho, stage 1 was 75 laps, as I just said. Chase Elliott won the pole for this race. Elliott leads lap 1, but Harvick challenges Elliott off of turn 2 and nearly slides up into him. Larson takes advantage and moves up to second, but then Harvick gets back around him for second on the outside. Almirola by Blaney for the 5th position. Blaney starts falling back through the top 10 early on. Kyle Busch scripts the wall a bit off turn 2. Hamlin, Matt DiBenedetto, and Kyle Larson start fighting for 3rd. Harvick starts to close the gap on Elliott for the lead. Larson, Bowman, and Almirola start fighting for the 4th position. Harvick challenges Elliott for the lead but can't complete the pass. DiBenedetto by Hamlin for 3rd, but is 7 seconds behind the lead. Larson starts falling back a bit at 42 laps, ironically. Elliott and Harvick had pulled out to almost a 9-second lead 53 laps in. I was kind of like, oh, the rest of the field really needs to get the lead out of their ass. Harvick challenges Elliott for the lead once again, even going 3 wide with the lap car. Then we get our first caution on lap 58 when Ricky Stenhouse gets up into Joey Gase in turn 1 and spins out, backing into the wall. Everyone comes in for service, and Harvick wins the race off pit road. Ty Dillon is penalized for the crew being over the wall too soon, and Christopher Bell is penalized for speeding. Harvick leads on the restart, but then we immediately get our second caution on lap 66 when Hamlin is in the middle of 3 wide. He either pushes up or gets loose in turn 3, but the end result is still the same. He gets up into Keselowski, collects him, and sends himself and Ryan Blaney into the wall, which pretty much ends Blaney's day. And Hamlin gets significant damage, which pretty much ruins his day. Keselowski gets a little bit of damage in the left rear, but is actually able to continue on without much problem. So there's that. So Harvick leads on the restart. Give me 1 second here. Truex managed to get up to 6th after starting last due to an engine change, and Harvick wins stage number 1. So most of the field comes in for service while several drivers stay out. One thing that NASCAR also did for this race was they brought a different tire compound, one that wears out a little bit better. So this basically allowed teams to gamble a little bit on, whether to just take 2 tires or no tires. Because for what we saw during the course of that run, the tires had quite a bit of a significant fall off. So, hey, driver skill coming back into play once again. So one thing I will say about this package is that NASCAR really seems to have hit on something with this shorter rear blade, full horsepower, and a tire that has a bit more wear to it, which brings driver skill back into play. So they are heading in the right direction. But there is some things about this race that I do have a negative about. But we'll get to that when we get to it. Stage number 2 was 115 laps. Harvick leads the start of stage 2. 3 wide further back in the pack. Truex gets by Matt DiBenedetto for 4th. Elliott chasing Harvick for the race lead. Early on, it looked like it was going to be Harvick versus Elliott. Logano gets by Truex for 4th. And Elliott completes the pass of Harvick for the lead in turn 1 for our first pure lead change of the day on lap 92. We have lots of side-by-side racing between 10th and 15th. Harvick tries to come back on Elliott for the race lead. Austin Dillon has to make an unscheduled stop for 4 tires. Keselowski gets by Kyle Busch for 4th. He was one of the guys who actually came down pit road for tires and also to do a little bit of repair to his car. So he had fresher tires than these guys, which is why he was kind of coming back towards the front. Harvick continues to hound Elliott for the lead. Harvick completes the pass the same way Elliott did. So we have our second pure lead change on lap 104. Keselowski gets by Logano for 3rd and begins challenging Elliott for 2nd, and gets by on lap 115. Bubba Wallace smacks the wall a bit in turn 1. Truex gets by Elliott for 4th, and Tyler Reddick. Yes, Tyler Reddick in the 8 car gets by Chase Elliott for 5th as Elliott begins this backslide. I think that was another great story that came out of this race was Tyler Reddick looked really good in that 8 car for Richard Childress Racing. Caution 3 on lap 131. His teammate Austin Dillon loses the right front tire going into turn 1, hits it pretty significantly. So that was pretty much the end of Dillon's day. Everyone comes in for service. Elliott wins the race off pit road this time. Joe Logano is penalized for an uncontrolled tire, and it did look kind of uncontrolled because they rolled it back towards the pit wall, and the crew guy kind of lost control of it, and it went outside their pit box. That would be the definition of an uncontrolled tire. And plus, they didn't get it back around to the driver's side of the car before Logano left, so that was another factor that played into that. Elliott leads on the restart. Keselowski nearly makes contact with Elliott, allowing Truex to take the lead on the restart with a bonsai 3-wide move, which that was pretty cool. And it's like, man, Truex had to start pretty much dead last for the 2nd week in a row due to an engine change, and he's all of a sudden leading the race. That's pretty crazy. So Truex, Elliott, and Keselowski are fighting for the race lead. Bowyer starts challenging Harvick for the lead, who ends up taking it back, I think. Hold on a second. Yeah, it was actually Truex in the lead, my bad. And then Elliott gets by Truex for the lead in turn 3 for a 3rd pure lead change on lap 141. Keselowski gets by Truex for 2nd. Bowyer challenging Kyle Busch for the 5th position. It's the best Bowyer's looked in quite some time. Harvick by Truex for 3rd. Logano starts charging back towards the front on the fresh tires, so pretty much evident that you can pass with this package, which is nice to see. Tyler Reddick gets by Bowyer for 6th. Elliott has to pit for a loose wheel from the lead, allowing Keselowski to assume the lead. But Elliott proved how fast the 4 tires were because he was able to get back around up behind the leader to get into the free pass position. Logano moves back into the top 10 at the halfway point of the race. Reddick gets by Kyle Busch for the 4th position. So all of a sudden it's just kind of like, man, Reddick looks really good right now. Larson, Jimmy Johnson, and Cole Custer fight for the 9th position. So Cole Custer is starting to look good in that 41 car. In the closing stages of stage number 2. Harvick closes on Keselowski for the lead, but then we have our 4th caution on lap 190, which was basically, the last lap of the stage. Garrett Smithley blows the motor on the front stretch, which necessitated the caution, and that allows Keselowski to win stage number 2. Elliott gets the free pass. So everyone comes in for service, and this time Truex wins the race off pit road. So Truex's pit crew is still looking good as ever. So stage number 3, 122 laps. Truex leads the start of stage 3. Keselowski gets a good jump on Truex and takes the lead. Tyler Reddick moves up to 2nd. So that's the highest we've seen Reddick all day. Logano gets by Harvick and Reddick for 2nd. Reddick drops back to 9th as he got really loose off turn 4 and was kind of feeling it out. But got back going. Battle for 4th between Kyle Busch, Truex, and Almirola. Harvick gets by Logano for 2nd. And Elliott is already back up to 9th with 100 laps to go. And then we have our 5th caution on lap 214 when Quinn Houff blows the motor and spins off turn 2. So a couple of engine failures by some of the back market teams. I mean, one thing that's kind of deceptive about Phoenix is that you can really torque these engines at the end of these straightaways, especially if you have like lower gears. Everyone comes in for service. Truex wins the race off pit road with just 2 tires, so a little bit of an interesting strategy. And this caution also came out right at the edge of the fuel window, so this could have gotten interesting. So Truex leads on the restart. Kez gets into Eric Jones in turn 3, but Jones manages to hang on. Kurt Busch gets into Christopher Bell in turn 3, causing Bell to almost spin, but he regains control. Logano manages to get back up into the lead by Truex for a 4th pure lead change on lap 225. Harvick gets by Truex for 2nd. Elliott gets by Reddick for the 5th position. Keselowski by Truex for 3rd, and Elliott goes by as well for 4th. Busch by Truex for 5th as Truex begins to fall back on the 2 tires. Jones nearly loses it in turn 2, but saves it. That was a common theme throughout the race. Harvick closes on Logano for the race lead. Then Harvick uses Bell as a pick to take the lead from Logano for a 5th pure lead change of the day on lap 251. And then we get our next caution, our 6th one lap later on lap 252 when Eric Jones smacks the wall in turn 1. And Cole Custer has nowhere to go but into the 20, spinning him out. Everyone comes in for service. Harvick wins the race off pit road and he leads on the restart, but then Logano regains the lead on the restart. Truex bull rushes up the inside along with Elliott. Almirola, Boyer, and Elliott go 3 wide for 6th. And then we get our 7th caution on lap 265 when Tyler Reddick loses the right front tire and pounds the turn 2 wall, ending what was a pretty damn good day. That was unfortunate. The leaders come in for service. Some drivers stay out. Logano loses 8 spots on pit road after the jack broke. So that was a bad break for him. Keselowski stays out and inherits the race lead, so he leads with 41 laps to go. Larson goes by everyone on the inside to claim the race lead on the restart, much like one of the restarts before. But then Brad Keselowski hunts him down and gets back by for our 6th pure lead change on lap 274. Kyle Busch gets by Larson for 2nd, and then this race started to get really sloppy. We have our 8th caution on lap 276. William Byron gets nudged into the wall by Chase Elliott, his own teammate. And then at the same time, Chris Buescher loses the left front tire and pounds the turn 1 wall after contact with Christopher Bell. Several cars come in for service, and Keselowski leads on the restart. Then we get our 9th caution on lap 282, and Truex gets nudged into the turn 1 wall by Eric Almirola, ending his day. Kez leads on the restart with 24 laps to go. Boyer starts fighting Logano for 2nd, but Logano gets ahead. Boyer with a little bit of left rear damage, which gave him a tire rub. Thankfully, for him, the tire didn't go down. Logano challenges Keselowski for the lead with Harvick and Kyle Busch chasing, and Logano is able to take it for a 7th pure lead change of the day on lap 293. Harvick nudges Kez out of the way for 2nd, with Kyle Busch trying to get by for 3rd. Busch and Keselowski start playing crossover for 3rd. They would cross under each other to take the 3rd position. The 10th caution came out on lap 303 Ross Chastain checks up to prevent running into Cole Custer and gets tagged by William Byron, spinning him out. Some of the field comes in for fresh tires. Logano leads on the restart with 4 laps to go. Then we get our 11th and thankfully final caution on lap 310 when John Hunter Nemechek and Ricky Stenhouse come together after trying to go 5 wide off turn 4. Not really going to work. So we're going into overtime. So this race got really sloppy in third stage, I have to admit. Logano leads on the restart of the first overtime. And despite Kevin Harvick's many attempts to get up to him, Logano holds Harvick at bay to win the 2020 FanShield 500 at Phoenix. So, overall, this was a damn good race. It just got really sloppy at the end of that third stage. So I'm going to have to take a little bit off for that. But my final rating for this race is going to end up being a 6 out of 10. I mean, it was still a pretty solid race overall. I mean, Eric Estep gave it a 95% on his Groovy gauge, which equates to a 9.5 out of 10, which I can't give it a score that high considering how sloppy that third and final stage was. But this was still a pretty solid race overall and a hell of a lot better than the one back in November, I'll tell you that much. We had 19 overall lead changes in this race, 7 of them pure, and the racing was a hell of a lot better than what we saw back in November. So it's alleviated, at least for the time being, the fears of the championship race here at Phoenix being one giant boring ass event. So hopefully NASCAR has learned that, yeah, maybe this the shorter rear blade and full horsepower, 750 horsepower, actually produces some pretty good racing. But some of these drivers, they need to clean it up a little bit because that third stage was sloppy as hell. But overall, this was still a solid Phoenix race and a hell of a lot better than what we saw back in November. So I will give it a thumbs up. But like I said, that's not been the big story of the week. We have a lot to get to. So let's go ahead and get into the news of the week, which for a change is last in a fuel episode as opposed to being one of the first things we talk about. So here we go. This is the news of the week. Oh, first, before we get into that, here are the race results and point standings since I don't have them up right now. So let's do it. Alright, so here I am back in my house. Man, I seriously need a haircut. I'm probably going to get one this weekend. But here we go, news of the week. Let's go ahead and get this over with. Let's start with some lighthearted fare. Tony Stewart let it slip that he is going to be returning to NASCAR for one race, and that would be on the Xfinity Series race at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which this year is taking place on the infield road course, which I think is a pretty interesting little thing that Indianapolis is doing. But let's be honest here, they needed to change something up about, NASCAR at Indianapolis, and running on the road course at Xfinity would be a good place to start. If anything, it would be a pretty good experiment to see if it would transition well to Cup. But yeah, Tony Stewart, of course, huge Indiana native, and of course the Indianapolis Motor Speedway means the world to him. So of course he would show up for this, well, I guess you could say historic race at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Xfinity Series. Of course, that's coming in July. On the free agent market, you can go ahead and cross Ryan Blaney off the list. Despite the fact that he's had some bad luck here early this year, it's pretty obvious that he's been running good. I mean, he's been running really good. I mean, he almost won the 500 and was in contention to win at Vegas until that late caution came out. and was running second at California before a tire ruined his day. And then he got taken out early at Phoenix. But other than that, I mean, he's actually been running really good this year. I would say a multiple win year might be in the cards for him this year. And I think as a result of that, Penske and Blaney signed a contract extension, so he is not going anywhere. He's going to continue to drive that 12 car for the foreseeable future, which is good for him because, you know, he's a pretty popular driver on the circuit. Probably not anywhere near as popular as his good buddy Chase Elliott, but I mean, it's pretty obvious the dude's got talent. He wouldn't have 3 wins otherwise, you know. And he's shown this year so far that he can contend for wins. You know, he probably should already have a couple in the bank, to be honest, not for some bad luck. But it's pretty good. It's good to see that Blaney got a contract extension. He was one of the guys that is on that contract year, or was on that contract year. But good stuff. Blaney and Penske remaining teamed up for at least another couple years. And a bit of a crossover. It's been confirmed that Jimmie Johnson, of course, who's in his final year of NASCAR racing, is honestly considering making the jump to IndyCar, perhaps as soon as next year. And that fire had some fuel added to it because of the announcement that he is going to be doing some testing for Arrow McLaren Schmidt Peterson at Barber Motorsports Park. They even got his number for the test, and I think they also are going to have Ally on board as well, which is his sponsor in the Cup Series. And who knows, Ally might be jumping over to sponsor him in IndyCar next year. He doesn't think he's going to run all the races, at least on the high-speed ovals. He doesn't plan on doing that, except maybe Indianapolis for obvious reasons. But yeah, Jimmie Johnson may be looking to make the jump to IndyCar next year after he retires from the Cup Series after this year. And of course, he's enjoying a resurgence. You know, the last couple of years has been kind of a downer, but he's actually been running pretty good this year, and I think he's finished in the top 10 3 out of the first 4 races. And he's, I think, 5th in points, if memory serves me correctly. So Johnson's starting to return to his old form a little bit here in the final year of his career. And then some more IndyCar news. On the way to St. Petersburg, Colton Herta's Team Hauler catches on fire. Apparently the fire started in one of the tire hubs, and did quite a bit of damage to the hauler. It looks like it did do a little bit of damage to the car, but not as much as it could have. And the team has been working feverishly to get it repaired in time for the St. Petersburg Grand Prix, there's going to be something to talk about that here in a minute. But not exactly the way you want to start the 2020 season, that's for damn sure. The Busch Clash. Yeah, the race that has been the Busch Crash the last couple of years, and has been, you know, the Busch Ass, the Busch Trash. You know, it's just not been good. It's not been good whatsoever. And I said they either need to remove it or change something up about it. Well, NASCAR is going with the latter option because in 2021, the Busch Clash is going to be contested on the road course at Daytona. Well then, looks like NASCAR is finally going to start embracing, you know, the infield road course mentality that was basically started by Charlotte. You know, because a couple years ago we had the first ever infield road course race, which Charlotte held, and now Indianapolis is going to be hosting the Xfinity Series on their infield road course this year, and the next year the Daytona Busch Clash is going to be moved to the road course. I honestly think this would be a pretty cool move, and it's going to be run under the lights as well. And because of the fact that they're compressing speed weeks, this is going to, I think, take place on Tuesday night, if memory serves me correctly, because they want to kind of compress it a little bit. So the Busch Clash is going to be moved to Tuesday night, I believe, which will be pretty interesting. And on the road course too. I'll be very interested to see how these Cup cars handle the road course, because I don't think I'm pretty sure a lot of the field, some of the field anyway, has run the road course from their experience in the Daytona 24. But I don't think a lot of these drivers have raced on the Daytona road course before, so this will be something to see next year. And who knows, maybe it'll make the Busch Clash, try saying that 5 times fast, interesting once again. And then there's this fuckhead. Brian France has crawled back out of the woodwork and is leaving his smelly stain on the face of NASCAR once again, because he is suing John Steele. And if you don't know who that is, he's apparently the guy who owns the Twitter account Drunken Brian France, which is clearly a parody account. But Brian France is apparently suing the guy who holds that Twitter account. 1 second here. Alleging tweets and use of his image creates confusion on whether it is Brian's personal account. One small problem with that: Brian France doesn't have a personal account on Twitter. And the other thing is, this is not a verified account either. And it even clearly shows that it's a parody account. So, I don't know. It says it asks for unspecified damages for misappropriating his likeness, portrayal in false light, and infliction of emotional distress. Brian, you've done all that shit yourself when you were arrested for that DUI a couple years ago. You became the laughingstock of motorsports when you basically fucked up what was one of the most important days in NASCAR history, when Chase Elliott won his first Cup race. That was a big deal for NASCAR, and you went and fucked it up by going and getting drunk off your ass and then getting behind the wheel of a motor vehicle. You did all that shit yourself. And here's another thing you need to realize. Drunken Brian France is a parody account. It even says it in the goddamn bio, and the guy who runs it has even said as much, that this is nothing but a parody account. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't parody accounts and parody and satire and that sort of thing, isn't that shit protected under the First Amendment? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it's protected under the First Amendment. And I honestly wouldn't be the least bit surprised, Brian, if you had your ass laughed out of the courtroom. Because this is fucking ridiculous. I mean, you were already the laughingstock of motorsports before, all this shit. And, when you step down as CEO and you faded away into the darkness, nobody was really talking about you. Everything was all hunky-dory, and then you come crawling back out of the woodwork with this bullshit. Go away, Brian. Nobody fucking cares about you anymore. About sick and tired of dealing with your stupid-ass bullshit. Lord have mercy. But now that we've gotten through all that, now it's time to address the elephant in the room. What is, without a doubt, the biggest story in the world, really. Not just in motorsports, not just in sports in general, but in just life in general. The fucking coronavirus. And The World Health Organization has officially declared it a pandemic. It's all over the world now. And it has resulted in a massive cascade effect on a lot of shit. Stocks have plummeted. Of course, people have contracted it. It's highly contagious. And some have died from it. Mainly those that are immunocompromised. And have like breathing issues like asthma and COPD and that sort of shit. And on top of that, a lot of sports organizations have decided to suspend operations while this outbreak is going on. The NBA has suspended the remainder of its season for the foreseeable future, as has the NHL, Major League Soccer. The NCAA has canceled March Madness and all of the conference championships and all that stuff. I would imagine Major League Baseball is going to be doing the same thing for too long. And motorsports has not been immune to this either. In fact, also, before we get to that, professional wrestling has also been kind of hit by it as well. Because All Elite Wrestling, which I'm also going to talk about on the AEW review this coming Saturday from Salt Lake, they've had to move to their next two events, which were scheduled to take place in New York and New Jersey. The next one in Rochester was supposed to take place next week, but the governor of New York has officially declared that there can't be any large public gatherings over 1,000 people, I think it was, which has necessitated AEW to move next week's show to Jacksonville, Florida. And they're currently in the process of moving the show from Newark to a new location. And both will be restricted attendance events, which means that basically there's probably not going to be a whole lot of people there. Probably just essential personnel and and that sort of thing. And but fortunately, both of those shows, both of those venues will still get their AEW shows. It's just going to be rescheduled to July. So that kind of sucks. But in addition to all that, motorsports has not been immune to this as well. Formula One. It was already reported that they were going to run the Bahrain Grand Prix basically behind closed doors. There was not going to be any fans in attendance for that race whatsoever. But now it seems like they are potentially going to, if they haven't already, they're going to cancel the Australian Grand Prix outright, which is the first race of the season. And this is in response to McLaren Racing withdrawing from the Australian Grand Prix because one of their team members tested positive for the coronavirus. Here's their statement. McLaren Racing has confirmed this evening in Melbourne that it has withdrawn from the 2020 Formula One Australian Grand Prix following the positive test of a team member for the coronavirus. The team member was tested and self-isolated as soon as they started to show symptoms and will now be treated by local healthcare authorities. The team has prepared for this eventuality and has ongoing support in place for its employee, who will now enter a period of quarantine. The team is cooperating with the relevant local authorities to assist their investigations and analysis. Zach Brown, CEO of McLaren Racing, and Andreas Sedel, team principal of McLaren F1, informed Formula One and the FIA of the decision this evening. The decision has been taken based on a duty of care not only to McLaren F1 employees and partners, but also to the team's competitors, Formula One fans, and wider F1 stakeholders. In addition to that, the WEC has canceled the 1,000 miles of Sebring. Several other motorsports organizations have either outright canceled or postponed their events. And also not immune to this is IndyCar and NASCAR, because the St. Petersburg Grand Prix this Sunday is in jeopardy. But one race that will not be taking place on its scheduled date is the Long Beach Grand Prix, unfortunately. Basically, California has been one of the hardest hit states here in the U.S. for the coronavirus, because I think they said there's been a couple hundred people that has been confirmed to be infected. some of those in the Long Beach area. And because of the fact that the Long Beach Grand Prix draws about 200,000 people, for the entire race weekend, they basically didn't want to take a chance on spreading the virus to so many people. And so they basically canceled the running of the race for April, although they are going to try to reschedule the Long Beach Grand Prix for possibly a later date. So they're not going to give up on 2020 just yet. But yeah, this kind of sucks because this basically ends a run of 44 straight years of the race running in the spring. And now because of this stupid ass, outbreak, the Long Beach Grand Prix might not even take place this year. And not only that, the St. Petersburg Grand Prix is also in jeopardy. According to the mayor, though, they said that the race will go on this weekend as scheduled, but will be without fans. Basically, it'll be an empty arena race, if that makes any sense. Kind of derived from, wrestling terms about how, some wrestling organizations in the past have organized what's known as an empty arena match, where the two participants in the match fight each other, and it's basically like no holds barred, and they fight in an empty arena. That's basically what the equivalent would be, except that this is a race in this case. But not only is the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg going to be run behind closed doors, but the next two NASCAR weekends at Atlanta this coming Sunday and Homestead next week will be the same thing. They will run the races as normal, but no fans will be allowed inside the racetracks. So it'll be the first ever empty arena races for both IndyCar and NASCAR. So whether we like it or not, this week and next week is basically going to be an historic event for both NASCAR and IndyCar, because we're going to see the first ever empty arena races for both series. I imagine that is going to be fucking weird for the race teams to be racing, holding a race without, having a live audience. Now, obviously, they're going to have a TV audience, and I would say they're going to get a massive television audience because, well, maybe not a massive, but I think they're going to see an uptick in their viewership, because with all other sports basically shutting down for the time being due to this outbreak, they're the only ones that are still going to be going on. They're just not going to have any fans live for their events, at least for the next two races. Now they're keeping an eye on the situation, and they're going to make a decision on future races and what they're going to do about them. But yeah, motorsports has not been immune to this either, even though they're going to continue on, unlike some of the other sporting organizations. This has just been a dark time, not just for sports, but for the world in general. Yet another fucking viral outbreak has hit, and it's just like, except that I've never seen anything like this, where organizations are having to like cancel events and all that stuff. I mean, because we've survived swine flu, bird flu outbreaks, SARS, you fucking name it. Now we all of a sudden have this coronavirus outbreak, and everybody's just losing their goddamn mind. And you have all these organizations that are basically, erring on the side of caution, and canceling or postponing events until this all blows over. Now, once we start getting into warmer times, from what we've heard, that it's going to help neutralize the virus, because it can't survive in hot weather. So that would be good. But that may be 1 or 2 months away, so it's hard to tell how long this outbreak is going to last. Hopefully not that fucking long, because this has just been extremely disruptive to everyday life. which is why the name of this episode is called hashtag fuck the coronavirus, because that's how I feel. Fuck this viral outbreak right in the ass. Not something we asked for, not something we wanted. I mean, fucking Tom Hanks got infected with the coronavirus, him and his wife, while they were in Australia getting ready to film, a movie. Shit is fucked up, man. Well, not exactly, the way I was expecting this week to end. Just with all this shit going on. I'll tell you what, the past 72 hours have been surreal, to say the least. Hopefully this all blows over soon, because this shit fucking sucks, man. But that's going to do it for this edition of The Fuel. A little bit unusual, because I swapped everything around a little bit, where the race review was first and the news of the week was second. But, the news of the week, with the whole coronavirus shit, I felt was a lot more important than, the race review this week, even though the race was pretty solid. But, this whole coronavirus shit has basically taken over the world, in terms of, who's, reporting it and, updates and what's doing to, the world in general, sports, and all that other shit. It's just been crazy. But thank you very much for watching. Boy, I'll tell you, the next episode of The Fuel is going to be interesting, reviewing a race that has no crowd. That is going to be weird. Well, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out. Bye.
You better like and subscribe or face the consequences. You have been warned.